Yes, there's a lot of buzz about the draft, but free agency follows just a few days after that. Today, we discuss what the Islanders should do in free agency, how they should approach it, and some potential targets. And it all depends on what approach Matthew Darche wants to take with this retool. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. And we have got a lot to discuss on today's show. Free agency, just a little more than a couple of weeks away. And how involved in it should the Islanders be? Who are some of the players they should target? And what approach should they take under the circumstances? We will break all of that down for you. Plus, some of the top prospects in this year's NHL draft described their games. We'll discuss what they had to say about themselves and, again, how that affects the Islanders, all that and more coming up on today's show. We have to start discussing free agency. I know the Islanders have the number 1 pick in the draft, and there's a lot to discuss about that, but we haven't really dived into free agency much on the show at all. And, 4 days after the draft, we have free agency following. And here's the thing about free agency. On paper, right now, the New York Islanders have roughly $20 million of cap space. That's after re-signing Adam Boqvist and Kyle Palmieri. However, when you sign all of your RFAs, and not even all of them, just the ones you're going to re-sign, almost all of that money disappears. If you sign Noah Dobson to an $8.5, $9 million a year deal, if you sign Simon Holmstrom to a $3.5, $4 million deal, if you sign Maxim Siplikov to a $3.5 million deal, and then Alexander Romanov to a $4.5 to $5 million deal, it doesn't leave you with any realistic amount of money to sign an impact free agent, unless you buy out a player, which Matthew Darche appears to be saying it, he's against it. It's not likely to happen. Or if you don't buy out a player, you have to make a trade to free up some cap space in order to be able to sign that kind of free agent. I mean, could you possibly squeeze in another Anthony Duclair type of contract? Somebody who's going to, play for $4-5 million a year? Even that would be extremely difficult if you re-sign Romanov, Dobson, Siplikov, and Holmstrom. And that doesn't include, Tony DeAngelo or, Perunovic. If he re-signs, you're not going to break the bank, but you still have to re-sign him. Gatcomb, Kyle McLean. There are guys out there you need to pony up and re-sign, even if they're not going to cost a lot of money. But the point is, Matthew Darche has gone out of his way to say that he believes this team, as presently constructed, is capable of making the playoffs this year. And is that realistically true? Again, I think, yeah, a bunch of ifs have to happen, but it is possible. But the ceiling right now, if everybody stays healthy and a couple of guys take a step forward and everything breaks right for this team, with the roster the way it is, whether they draft Misa or Schaefer or Hagens or somebody else, this team at best right now, the way it's currently constituted, is a wild card team that barely makes or barely misses the playoffs and probably gets eliminated in the first round. That's the ceiling, the way this roster is presently constituted. Free agency has the power to change that if the Islanders are willing to make a splash. And look, we know that everydayers are very aware that the New York Islanders, in the entire history of the franchise, and free agency is really only since the mid-2000s, but since then, in the last 20 years that we've had modern NHL free agency, the Islanders have never signed an elite free agent in his prime. And, that would have to change if you want to make an impact and get this team beyond that barely in or barely out of the playoffs threshold. And the number one thing that this team lacks, and there are many things that this team needs to improve to be more than just a fringe playoff team. But the number one thing this team lacks is offense. The Islanders finished 27th in the league in goals scored this year and 30th in the league in shooting percentage. The power play, as we all know, next to last in the league. Right now that you're not getting Brock Nelson back. So Brock Nelson had 20 goals in 61 games, which puts him at approximately a 25 goal a year pace. Where do you make up those 25 goals over the course of a season? And I think, Cal Ritchie is the first candidate, and maybe he gets you some of those goals. We don't know yet what his rookie NHL season is going to be. What Cal Ritchie will accomplish 2-3 years from now, probably a lot more than what he's going to put up numbers-wise as a rookie. But he might be able to get you, let's say, 15 of those 25 goals. Maybe Simon Holmstrom, who had 20 goals this year, will get you up to 25. I don't think Bo Horvat is going to be significantly more than the 28 goals he had this year. Maybe he goes up to 30 or 31. I think Anders Lee is more likely to regress a little bit off the 29 goals he scored. So that probably cancels out whatever you got in addition from Horvat. Kyle Palmieri probably stays roughly the same. I don't see a lot of options to make up those 25 goals. Maybe you get a little more from Maxim Siplikov if he is still on the team. And obviously Matthew Barzal, he'll give you maybe 10 more goals than what he gave you last year in the extra games, maybe 15 at most. But again, that just gets you a little above 27th in the league. I mean, if you break even, you're still in the bottom 10 teams in the league in goals scored. So goal scoring and offense is obviously priority one if you're able to add a free agent here. But that is the most expensive thing you can add in free agency. To get a guy who is a bona fide 25, 30 goal scorer, you're going to have to pay. And with the limited cap space the Islanders have right now, and the unwillingness, at least theoretically, of Matthew Darche to move away from some of the veterans on this roster, whether it's through trades or buyouts or letting their contracts lapse, you have a problem where there's just not a lot of money to go around. But let's say they can free up some cap space, and they can. It'll take a little creativity. You may have to make a trade. You don't want to sacrifice draft picks and prospects. I don't want to trade away a player and have to give up a second or third round pick as a sweetener at this point. But if they could do it, who are some of the targets that the Islanders should be looking at? We'll take a look at some free agents who are reasonable, who the Islanders might be able to try to convince to sign on the island if they free up the cap space. We'll have that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are winding down, but every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And Islander fans, you can use your knowledge of hockey on FanDuel as well. Check out all the latest odds there. This is the perfect time to sign up with FanDuel because if you're new to FanDuel, you can place that first $5 bet, and if you win it, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. All you have to do is head to FanDuel.com, place that first $5 bet, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So who's out there that realistically the New York Islanders could target? And again, I think we have to go back and say that, if the Islanders are really doing a retool, if they're really retooling, where you think, okay, we're going to take a little step back this year, get some better draft picks. 2026 is a deep draft and a strong draft. You don't go out and sign a free agent this year. The time, ideally, to add a free agent, in my mind, is next summer. But if the Islanders decide to do that, if they're really gunning for the playoffs this year, who are some of the players they could add? And one guy that really comes up in my mind is Brock Boesser of the Canucks. He is a winger. He's 28. He's projected by The Athletic to earn about $8.5 million a year for 6 years. He's coming off a 25-goal, 50-point season in 75 games. He could help you with the power play. He helps you at even strength. The issue with Boesser has been consistency and keeping him healthy. But, after all the mess that was going on in Vancouver last year, having him come to the island, putting him into the top line or the second line, depending on, who else you get and how it works out, I think there is some interest there. And if you'd sign him for that 6-year, $8.5 million a year deal, yeah, he'll be 34 when the deal ends, but that's, about when you want to get off the horse, right? I mean, that's kind of where you want to be. So I could totally see him being a good candidate. If you're thinking shorter term, and I think the Islanders should be thinking longer term, and again, up to me, you wait a year to sign that impact free agent, but you want to think shorter term, how about Mikhail Granlund? coming off a year that he split between San Jose and Dallas. He could play center. He could play the wing. He is 33. He's projected to have a 2-year deal worth around $5 million a year. Granlund, a little more of a setup guy than a sniper, but he had 22 goals and 66 points. He could kill penalties. He can help you on the power play. And ideally, he's a second line kind of a guy. So, could you pair him with Anders Lee maybe on the second line, or unless Lee is up on the first line? There are different options, but Granlund, you sign him for 2 years. Again, he's 35 when the deal expires. And if you're thinking about really contending next year, taking that big step forward next year, maybe, just maybe, that is kind of the way to go as far as adding a guy like Granlund to your team. We'll see. We will see. One other player that I'm going to mention, another Canuck possibly, is Pius Suter. He's 29. Again, a 4-year, $5 million a year contract is roughly the projection that I've seen. Here's a guy who can again play wing or center. He's more of a third line guy, but he sees the ice so very well. He would essentially be, here's what the deal is. If you sign Suter, you're trading JG Pageau. Suter is more productive offensively, not as good, obviously, in the faceoff circle, but, Pageau was number one, but he's also 4 years younger than Pageau. And he's a guy who can give you good matchups defensively where he'll check the other team's top player. So I think here is a guy who gave 25 goals and 46 points to the Canucks. If you can get 20 goals and 50 points out of Suter, I think that is an upgrade over Pageau in a lot of different ways. So those are some players just off the top of my head that I could see the Islanders pursuing. We're not talking Mitch Marner here. You want to go after a big fish like a Nikolai Ehlers or a Mitch Marner, you got to trade Anders Lee. You've got to free up a lot of cap space. You probably have to deal Lee and Pageau just to get into the discussion of Marner. And then you got to sign him, moving forward. So it's really difficult to imagine the Islanders paying Marner, 13, $14 million a year for the next 8 years. I don't see the Islanders going that route. Nikolai Ehlers probably going to get paid more than $8 million a year. First of all, very, very possible that Ehlers stays in Winnipeg. And second of all, he's a steady 20 goals, 60 point kind of a guy, but is he worth the $8 million a year that he would get for 6 years? That's a different thing. He does have some issues about durability. Played 69 games this year. I think he'd be a solid addition. But again, if you're going to spend that kind of money, you got to clear up some real cap space. And we'll see whether or not, I get the feeling, and I could be wrong, but I get the feeling based on what has been said and what has been done so far, that between now and the trade deadline this coming season, Matthew Darche is largely going to figure out what he's got. And over the course of the season, culminating in the trade deadline, and then probably much more next offseason, that's when Darche is going to start to move out some of the guys he doesn't think are part of the long-term program here and start to bring other players in. But I think this year, and I'd love for Darche to prove me wrong, I think this year is going to be gradual change until the trade deadline. We'll see. We've got more to get to on today's show. The top 3 prospects in this year's draft discussed their game. We're going to talk about that. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a winger who was an enforcer who spent part of 2 seasons with the Islanders in the late 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who this Brookfield, Wisconsin native is. We've got all that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot when you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. So at the Combine, and again, we're kind of just tying up a few loose ends from the Combine. But some of the Islanders, some of the top prospects, kind of describing their own game. And I always find it interesting. I mean, how players, especially 17, 18-year-old players, perceive themselves, who they model their game after, who they admire. That's always interesting. And yet you obviously also need to figure out, what scouts and front office types say. So you want both. Here's what Matthew Schaefer, who is, according to most people, the most likely first overall pick. Here's what he said. I'm a two-way defenseman. I'm really competitive. I love winning, and I hate losing. Really good hockey IQ and really good skating ability. I like to play in all 3 zones and just be a defenseman that can play anywhere. Power play, penalty kill, go on with a minute left to gain the lead, or go on with a minute left to protect the lead. I want to be an all-around player. He said that he likes to watch Miro Heiskanen and Cale Makar, but doesn't necessarily pattern or model his game after either player. So that's Matthew Schaefer. Here's what Michael Misa had to say. My playmaking is probably my strongest asset. I'd give it to my speed and shot too. Those 3 things are something I look to take with me to the next level, and I think that's going to help my game a lot. Coming into this year, I just tried to round out my game with that 200-foot play. Offensively, I like to make plays. I've got a good hockey IQ, and I just like to make players around me better. Defensively, I tried to become more reliable and just be harder on the puck defensively to make myself that 200-foot player. And according to Misa, he models his game after players like Nikita Kucherov and Cyril Kaprizov. Interesting comparisons. I think that would be great. James Hagens, the Long Island native, who a lot of fans want for sentimental reasons and because it would be such a good story. Here's what he had to say. I think I'm an exciting player to watch. I'm someone that uses his skating, his hockey IQ to be able to see the ice and make plays. I love to compete, especially on the ice. I'm able to play a full two-way game and able to be trusted in all zones of the ice. His player comparison, he compared his game to Jack Hughes of the New Jersey Devils. So, look, none of those descriptions are bad, right? I mean, nobody's going to say that they compare themselves to a fourth line or a black ace who plays 5 games a year. No, not who you compare yourself to. I think, quite honestly, that any one of these players would be an asset to the New York Islanders. The key right now is for Matthew Darche to figure out which player has the biggest long-term impact on this hockey team. Who's going to be the best out of the 3 this year? Not something that should be really considered. It's not who's going to, if you're comparing Misa and Hagens, let's say, the fact that you would get 2 or 3 or 5 more goals this year from one as compared to the other should be secondary to 3-4 years from now, who's going to be the best player? Again, this is why Matthew Darche is getting paid the big bucks, and we'll see where he goes. Everybody seems to be convinced that Schaefer is going to be the Islanders' first pick, but there's also a lot of rumors that the Islanders could try to trade if Hagens is available with the 4th or 5th pick still, that the Islanders could try to make a trade and get that pick. So we'll see. It's going to be an exciting few weeks here before that announcement is made on June 27th. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. This is a tough one because this player only played 23 games with the New York Islanders over parts of 2 seasons, but he was very popular as an enforcer. Essentially, Saturday is the 38th birthday of former Islanders forward Joel Recklitz. The Brookfield, Wisconsin native was not drafted. Big kid, 6'4", 220 pounds. Made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 2008-2009. Played 17 games that year, 68 penalty minutes, and had 1 assist. He played 6 games for the Islanders the following season, 27 penalty minutes in those, and then later played 3 games for the Capitals and spent the rest of his career in the AHL. For his NHL career, he played 26 games, 23 of them with the Islanders, had an assist, and 105 penalty minutes. Recklitz, you didn't want to mess with him. He was a tough cookie. One of his better games as an Islander, March 5th, 2009, Islanders hosting the Rangers at the Old Barn, the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The goalies, Henrik Lundqvist for the Rangers, Jan Denis for the Islanders. And with the Islanders trailing 1-0 in the second period, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Joel Recklitz, sets up Blake Como for a goal to tie the game at 1. Dean McCammond had the other assist, and that was the first, last, and only point of Joel Recklitz's NHL career. Unfortunately, the Islanders lost this game by a score of 4-2, but for Recklitz, he had the assist. He was a +1, and he was on the ice for 3 minutes and 52 seconds in this game. Joel Recklitz is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You could find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout this important offseason. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. Have a great weekend, everydayers. We're back on Monday with the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Anything going on in contract negotiations, draft news, free agency news. We will have it all for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.